Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I am so thrilled to have you join us today because we're dedicated here at the podcast exploring the way of doing business and doing life with a purpose. And we believe that purpose is approach our work and our lives with a servant's heart so you can make a difference. The show was created to motivate, inspire, and educate you how you can impact your world. We think that's such a game changer for everybody. My guest, I just met him a few months ago. We've become really good friends. We have a lot of alignment, but you want to take a pad and paper. I say this all the time, and you want to take notes. I'm ready to take notes because he's experienced a lot. He's done a lot, and talk about a servant's heart. He's got it in spades. So when you're listening to my guest today, I want you to think about how you're going to serve yourself, others, and what impact will you create with that? And I added serving yourself because I want to explain that real quick. If you can't take care of yourself and love yourself and self-worth, how are you going to serve others? You just can't. And guess what? When you start serving yourself, the world looks so much better. I guarantee it because that's what I've done. And my guest has done, and we'll talk about that as well. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by an incredible partner, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine being part of an exclusive community of high-income, very successful business owners and entrepreneurs from very diverse industries. Together, they're building a thought leader platform to impact and change the world. For more information on Pantheon Alliance, reach out to me and I'll get you information and we'll go from there. So when I met this guest for the first time, I was blown away. And not that he's faith is a big part of his life. I love that part, but he really was a true servant's heart. He's been very successful, but he's like me. He's always looking at ways to impact and uplift and bring the law of increase to people. So I want to welcome to the show, Jeff. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate you having me today.
Why is a servant's heart so important to you?
Yeah. So the whole concept of business, I believe in. So I'm a Christian. So I tell that as a disclaimer for my perspective, right? So you can understand where I'm coming from. But I take the second commandment really seriously. And you're like, okay, we're talking about the 10 commandments? No, we're talking about Jesus' second commandment. His first one was love God, right? With all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Second was love thy neighbor as thyself. Okay, so you actually said something really interesting. You got to love yourself. And in that, it's implied that a person does love themselves because they'll feed themselves, they'll clothe themselves, they'll take care. They got to look after themselves. And then looking after yourself, and you say, okay, so I look after, I think about what what I'm going to have for dinner. I want to have something pleasing. I want to have a nice, maybe I want to have a lemonade. I want that to taste good and sweet. Okay, when's the last time you said, I wonder if that person over there is having a good meal? Right? I wonder if that person over here who's homeless could use a hamburger. Right? I wonder if this person that I'm doing business with is going through something today that they really need to talk about, right? Am I willing to open myself up? Because my schedule is crazy today. Maybe I have my record is 22 meetings in one day. Maybe I have 22 meetings today, right? Right? And I come across this person and I realize it hits me like a ton of bricks. Whatever they just said just triggered something that says to me, they are going through something and they really could use a friend right now. Am I going to stop, put off one of my 22 meetings and say, how about for a half an hour, we go grab coffee. I'll text somebody and let them know I'm going to have to miss today. right? What that means is that, like, sometimes it's you who needs the help. Maybe you're the one who needs, like, hey, I really need somebody to talk to, right? I'm having a rough day. Or I'm super excited about something. I just need to tell somebody about this awesome thing that I just had happen, right? Have you ever been in a position where you've had something so great to tell, but there was nobody available to talk to in that moment?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. It's frustrating.
It's frustrating. So if you think about servant's heart, it's around being available for people, to give them the things that you provide for yourself on a daily basis, the food, the caring, the companionship, right? And then you also do it to that other person. Why? Because God made us as a masterpiece, right? And he loves us, and so he actually wants us to love one another, because like he loves us. And that's the whole idea. So the concept for business, you say, okay, so doing business with servants, how does this all fit together? Well, imagine a world where everybody applies the second commandment of love thy neighbor as thyself to business. Now I apologize, but the attorneys might have a significantly lower workloads. Right. So all my attorney friends out there, guys, don't fight me on this one. Go with it. I'm sure there'll be work for you, just not in the form that it is today. Right.
Yeah.
But also you think about it from your team. You think about the last manager or leader that you knew that you would be willing to run through walls for. And think about the way that they related to you or connected with you or did things for you that you know so in one case, one of my leaders, my mom had just passed away, and I was just like, I'm gonna have to go take care of these things. And he goes, no, come here, sit down, come in my office. He asked the administrative person, goes, go get him a coffee, right? We're gonna talk. And we did. We talked for an hour and a half, right? I mean, he was an SVP, EVP of a $300 billion company. I guarantee you he had a lot of things on his mind that day. But he prioritized me in that moment. And he told me about a circumstance where he needed support. And actually his boss, our chief HR officer, had stepped in and said, and made sure that he was taken care of during a time of immense, turmoil. And I thought about that, and every time that I faced into other situations, I would use those as a reminder to say, where are my priorities? Little things like that set the North Star for your team, your individual contributors, your leaders, all the folks within your team. You don't understand how much of an impact those little things are going to have. And then what you're going to find is that people start doing amazing things. They innovate. They achieve things that you don't know how they did it. And you're sitting there scratching your head going, it's almost embarrassing. I don't know how we were able to do this, because there's no way on earth that this should have been able to happen. But yet we achieved it, and think about, some of the things that we've done this in my teams. It wasn't because I was some great leader, although, I had things that I brought. There's nothing, not to say that I was, just sitting there twiddling my thumbs. I was working hard alongside, doing other things with them. But the thing that I made sure that I focused in on was them as humans. I wanted to care about as many of the folks on my team as I possibly could get to know. I would actually have all of my staff. I'd have my admin. I asked her to do this because I didn't know how to do it quickly for myself. So I asked her to figure this out. I said, program all of my entire team, all 400 people, into my contacts and make as many of them favorites as possible on my cell phone, so that I could just roll through and make random calls to anybody in my team and we'd have to update it monthly because, organizations
change.
evolve and change. But I could roll through and call anybody at any point in time. I would just have to make sure I'd be thinking about the time zone. Okay, I'm not going to call it like 3:00 in the morning their time, which I did do at 5 a.m. one time, but that was because the person was traveling. I didn't know it. That was an accident. But beside the point, calling people and saying, hey, this is Jeff. How you doing? Yeah, at first when they get a VP or executive calling, they like, stand up a little straighter. Like, oh, hey, by the time that you're done, after you've made a few of those phone calls over time, and you're just saying, hey, I'm not here to interrogate you. I'm just sitting here to talk and chat, see how you doing, checking in. One, you learn a ton about your organization and the people, but you also show that you cared. And that 5-minute conversation, what people have told me, they said that they remember the things that we talk about for years sometimes. Yeah. I wish my memory was that good.
Yeah, me too. And it's interesting. I talk about love in business, and that's kind of what you're saying. Love thy neighbor. Why can't we love our employees with that care? You're not intimately in love. You're just, I love and care about them. And the phrase that you said, and I want you to finish, is run through a wall with you. Now, audience, that's not what we're saying, but they'll do things for you that other companies go, how do you get your employees to do it? Because of what you just said. It's a game changer.
It's a game changer. Yeah. And the funny part about all of this is that as you think about agape love, or a selfless, unconditional type of love, you think about it, you're like, listen, no manager on earth is perfect. Don't beat yourself up because you didn't call all 50 people on your team today. I've never called all of my people individually in one day. Never been able to make that happen, nor will I probably, right? Yeah. But I was bound and determined I ruthlessly prioritize my schedule. And I was telling you, we were talking about ruthless prioritization, so that I would have time at different points in the day to make a quick 5-minute call here, or another, couple calls there, or my drive time. I'd say, okay, so who's in the best time zone to be able to take a drive time call from me without interrupting family time. So we'd have all sorts of, and I'll tell you, as a leader, I learned more. Sometimes I'd have people all the way in the UK, Singapore, other parts of Asia, that would say that I'd have them as like the director or AVP over that area, right? And they'd be like, I don't know how you know sometimes more about my people than I know about my people. And you're like 4,000 or 8,000 miles away.
Yeah.
And I said, because I make these random calls and I just talk and allow them. And it doesn't, 5 minutes is a brilliant amount of time for you. You can really learn a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, leave the message too. Hey, thinking about you. Hope things are well. Calm. There's so many ways to do it. People are listening going, this sounds great, Jeff, but my company's hurting. I don't have time. I'm this or that. They have excuses.
Well, let me tell you about a guy who I was recruiting for. He was way back about 30 years ago. He is a bald guy, about 6'4", built like a tank. And he was a VP of operations, and he would go do walking around his facilities and plants. He actually decertified the union 3 times over.
What?
And he's still walking this earth, as far as I know. So nothing against my union friends. I'm just joking. A good Jimmy Hoffa joke every so often doesn't hurt anybody. But he decertified him, and I was a young recruiter, recruiting him, and I was like, help me understand, how does one decertify the Teamsters 3 times, right? He goes, oh, I'm good friends with the Teamster leadership. He goes, they didn't decertify him because I created this us-them mentality between management and the Teamsters. He goes, I didn't worry about the Teamsters. I worried about my employees 100%. He goes, I would go walk around and talk with them, and I made it a habit, blah, blah, blah. He told me about it, and then I absorbed it, and I said, wow, that was impressive, very interesting. So I'm doing reference checks on him. And one of the reference checks goes, he didn't tell you the whole story, did he? I said, what do you mean the whole story? He goes, well, he had a severe back injury a few years ago that left him unable to walk for about 6-8 months. I said, unable to walk. I said, how do you work? He goes, he is able to work. He after about a few weeks, he is able to work, but he's in a wheelchair. He goes, he worked for facilities at every plant and had them build ramps the whole way around. And he never missed as he called, he goes, I can't do a walkthrough, but I'll do a roll through now. And yeah, they called him the Colonel. They called him the Colonel. He'd roll down, he'd go up to somebody working a machine, just talk to him and say, how are you doing? And I learned a lot about that from that interaction 30 some years ago, to say, those interactions were really important to those people, so much so that they actually changed their allegiances and their perceived need to have outside representation. And they were able to create a trust-based relationship between the management and those workers in such a way that it was a fruitful relationship, and the productivity was off the charts.
Yeah. We're going to keep going down a rabbit hole. We said we would do this before the show.
Yes.
But these are incredible stories, because audience, listen to these stories. There's a theme to them, and I think you're getting it. And share them with other people. That's what I love about stories. And I've shared the CVS story of the executive at CVS. Share that incredible story.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So one of the big stories at CVS is that we were a very purpose-driven, purpose-led organization. And right about the time that I was joining, we had a situation where cigarettes were at complete odds with our entire business model. The only problem is that they were a $2 billion, with a B, revenue line item. Okay. When you're talking with your shareholders, your board of directors, and you say, hey, I got this idea. I think I'd like to wipe $2 billion off our top line.
Yeah.
Not too many people are going to say, oh, sign me up, and why don't we just double down on that? Keep going, right? No, people are like, whoa, hey, but also the problem is that it interfered with some of our business, because we're a healthcare company now. We had this pharmacy benefit management. We had insurance carriers, and the insurance carriers are sitting there going, well, you're selling cigarettes on one end, but then you're trying to work with us on another end. Like, you're actually hurting the bottle. And we started looking at it, the executive team, and led by the CFO and CEO at the time. So they actually led the board of directors, along with Helena Folks, who's the president of retail, and a number of other folks. They led this campaign to work with the board and the shareholders to eliminate cigarettes from our facilities. And they said, and it was actually very honest. They said, this is a moment in time where we can actually live our values the way that we said that we would. We're helping people on their path to better health, and this is a perfect example. So they did. But they didn't just do it. They decided on one day to go from selling cigarettes to pick a day where there would be not a single cigarette store sold from any of our 10,000 stores in a day. We're not going to wean off of it. We're going cold turkey as a company. But on top of that, we put together this campaign that said, what is your reason?
Wow.
What is your reason why you want to support our no smoking campaign? We're going to stop. CVS, the company, is going to stop smoking, right? Stop selling smokes. What is your reason? Why are you excited? And people write this, my mom died from cigarettes. And they'd put it right there in the cube or in their office, and everywhere you go, you could actually go and say, wow, you know what? I had both my parents smoke too. In a moment, you can go from not knowing somebody to all of a sudden seeing something that's very deep and meaningful, that's connecting both of you to your common purpose in the company. very visual and have a conversation where you go from a place of disconnectedness or unconnected to a deep connection within literally moments. And you think about these executives and what they're going through, and they're trying to form alignment and cohesion. They picked something that cost $2 billion. You know what, they were about 180 billion in revenue whenever we made that change. When I left 7 years later, we were at 320 billion.
Successful.
$140 billion increase in revenue. Do you know another company that's just sitting on a $140 billion increase over 7 years? There's very, very few of them, none outside of the tech space or pharmaceutical.
Exactly. Right. And 2 billion. So that's 138 billion ROI. I think everybody in the audience would stand up for that. I love that. And it reminds me, stand up for cancer. I think they're doing the same thing at the baseball stadiums. Because it gets me emotional. It's like for my mom and these baseball players that we idolize and love, and they're putting up, they become human, right? I think that's what you guys did too with the employees. They become human, not there's the HR person, there's the CFO person, there's the accountant. They become Steve, Jeff, Debbie, Joe.
That's right.
Powerful.
Very powerful. Mm-hmm.
What an inspiration.
Yeah. And that's what, whenever I talk about, my podcast, Growing Your Business with People, one of the reasons that I have it out there is similar to yours. I love, doing business with the servant's heart. The concept is very aligned. Is the fact that actually you don't have to be I am not a goody two shoes. I am not a perfect person. I am not Mr. Nice Guy all the time. I haven't survived in corporate America for 28 years and not have a few sharp teeth, right? It's not about the fact that you can't be effective. It's just not like this happy all the time type of person. It's about doing your job the way that it should be done, and do it well. But while you're doing your job the way that it should be, part of your job is actually being a shepherd and looking out for people who are above you, below you, beside you, in all walks, and keeping your eye out so that so if those people need something that's beyond just the task or the business at hand, you're there to do that little extra as well, because that's really leadership at its core, is being willing to go out, paint outside the lines, and be able to serve those people who might not be in your path of executing project A, B, or C.
Yeah. I love we're saying all this. And audience, I'm going to make a point. We're getting to the end here. Part 2 is coming, just so you know. And I told them before the show, there's a lot more we can cover. But we're talking about $140 billion serving their employees.
Yeah.
Love, die, employee. Let's just change neighbor to employee just to fit this story. You're a plumbing company making $300,000 a year, can do the same thing. You're not going to make billions, but are you going to increase your income? It happens, right, Jeff?
100%. Yeah. My the lady who does my social media for my podcast, I heard that she lives in the Philippines. Her roof, something fell on it. It put a huge hole in the roof, right? Ooh. And so we stepped in. We did a little bit of stuff to help, right? But immediately, as soon as I heard, I gathered our entire team, and we just prayed over her. Listen, I can't always fix every problem for every employee. Sure, we might be able to do little things along the way to help. We might not be able to solve the whole problem. But sometimes if you're willing to talk with somebody, listen to them, sometimes if you want to pray over them, those things go a million miles. I was talking to a friend of mine just the other day, is about 3 months ago. And I asked, she's the CEO of a large corporation. And I said, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And she's talking about this and that. And I just said, hey, how can I pray for you? And she stopped, and she just kind of wiped the side of her corner of her eye. And she said to me, she goes, I've never had anybody ask me that question before. And then we spent a few minutes talking about some pretty tough stuff that she's going through, right? Like, I'm not trying to be some saint over here. I'm not like Mr. Hyper Christian or anything like that. Like, that's not the point. The point is like, do you care enough to ask somebody, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? Do you want to have a conversation? Even though you might have an exceptionally busy, intense, and focused day, which I do every day. Like, even in my consulting, I have tons of focus. Like, when I'm on fire, like, my wife knows that she can literally walk in the room, like, dance on throw confetti in the air. I wouldn't even notice that anything else was happening because I'm in a zone, right?
I know
It's
that.
not about not being in the zone. It's about saying, am I willing to pay attention to the people who are outside of my zone?
Yeah.
Am I willing to do that?
And I'm so glad you said it the way you did. Such a great tip, because I hear it all the time. And audience, pick this up. What did it cost Jeff to do that? Maybe a little time, but you're talking about money, and I don't have a lot of time, but do you have 5 minutes to say, I'm going to pray for you. I want to talk to you. Hey, what's your problem? This is happening, or I'll pray for that. Or, hey, if there's any way I can support you, just reach. Those are servant opportunities, and they will change your universe. And in our thought, change God's currency. I call it God. Every time you serve, you're building that bank with God. We talked about that before. If you're not a faith-driven person, you can say the universe. It's so powerful. I love that you're doing it at a high level, because I want 95% of the people that are on my podcast are not that. They're entrepreneurs just starting out. They can all do this.
Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur just starting out. Don't kid us here. I've done a lot of stuff in corporate, but this building my own business was something that it's taken off. It's doing wonderful, but it's an experiment unto itself. And I said, I'm going to apply all of my lessons to, I'm not going to forget all the stuff I learned. I'm going to learn new things, of course, but I'm not going to forget what I learned. And that's what, and doing the podcast the way I do, it just reinforces it. Just like you, and we get some like amazing people. You're sitting there on listening to this. You're like, wow, I can't believe this person's actually talking to me. Like even talking to you today, being on your podcast. I'm like, I can't believe Steve's got me on his podcast. That's wonderful. This is awesome. Great
attitude. It's just so infectious. And I call it the carryover effect. You could take that same mindset. Mindset has to go with the heart. I always say you can have a servant mindset. You also have to have a servant's heart. Right. That's why the podcast is named that. So we're at the end here. We've gone overtime, which I knew we would, because that's how we are. I've got a fun question. So you've got a reservation at a restaurant. It's a table of 4. You, of course, occupy one of the seats. The other 3 seats, who would you invite, dead or alive? Why would you invite them? But I think the most favorite part is, what food would you order?
Wow. Okay, here we go. So number 1 on that list is going to be Jesus, because he's got to be the most fascinating person that's ever lived. God, man, and all that. So that if he's willing to come, I'm down. I really enjoy history, and one of my favorite U.S. history characters is actually Abraham Lincoln, and not for the fact that he navigated the Civil War, which was really interesting, and there's a lot of stuff that goes with that. Actually, what I found interesting was that he kind of took himself from a pretty impoverished and very backwater place to be able to use things like humor and caring for people and listening and stories, right, to connect. And he literally became beloved by the nation eventually, unfortunately, after his untimely death, for some of that stuff. So you think about people like that. And then I think I'm just reading the book of Daniel again, and an interesting character would be Nebuchadnezzar. Okay. So Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon at the time, right? He actually goes through all of this stuff and eventually gets saved, like eventually accepts God as God, but he had to I mean, had everything happen to him. He threw Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, threw Daniel in the lion's den. He tried to kill the prophets of God so many times, and like God continued to deliver him. Finally, dude, you think you get the point. He doesn't quite get the point. So eventually this guy, God, makes him to, basically go on all fours, act like like an ox, and be out in the field for 7 years while he works on his heart. And at the end of that time, he said, I'm not going to release you until you admit that I'm God and that you're willing to serve me. And they does, and he's released from it, and he goes back from being king. There's even a quiet, like, if you think, oh, well, that's too much to believe. Well, there's actually in the history records where kings brag on themselves, a 7-year period in Nebuchadnezzar's reign where there's absolutely nothing said about that 7-year period. So, I mean, last time I checked, kings aren't going to go bragging about the fact that they're wandering around the fields like an ox, right? Because they're being cursed by God, right? They're not just going to do that. So anyhow, I think he would be a fascinating, because I mean, think about the world back in Babylonian times, and think about all the things he had to go through, and the way God had to work on his heart to get it right, so he could get rid of pride. I mean, dude basically was king of almost the whole world. I mean, like the vast majority of the world was under his reign, and he built this enormous statue that was like 90 or 120 feet in the air of, basically himself. I mean, these enormous things that he created. But then you look at it and go, but yet God still had to make him humble. And what could what are the things that he'd love to say to us, to say, listen, I know I was an idiot. I might have been the king, but I was an idiot. It took everything. Don't let God, don't push God into a position where he has to, he has to break out corporal punishment for you.
Not good. He's got a great name too.
Yes,
Nebuchadnezzar. It's just a beautiful name too. Just for that, I'd have him at the table, right? So, what are we ordering for food? What are we eating?
I think definitely. I think we're gonna have to have bread and fish. Because probably only get two breads and like 5 fish. And if we're still hungry, Jesus,
we'll make more.
The whole restaurant will be eating. We'll be fine.
That's the best answer to this question I've ever heard. You win the prize, whatever that is. I don't know. We'll figure that out.
I'll take it.
Jeff, you're a blessing. I'm so glad God put us together. And it really means a lot to me. We're going to stay connected. You've really motivated my audience and inspired and educated. So I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart being such a great guest. So somebody listening, how can they reach out or connect you or support you?
Yeah. So go to growingyourbusinesswithpeople.com or GYBWP.com. You can check me out on LinkedIn. You can learn about the podcast. I've had over 80 guests now. We have had some amazing folks. And then for consulting purposes, if you're interested, just reach out. It'll be right on the website, or do jeff@jkladvisors.ai. And I'm a very techie guy. So even though AI technically is a country, I liked AI. So I put it at the end of my,
I love it. You have such great answers. Well, we were blessed. Thank you. Reach out to him. By the way, I was on the podcast, but I'm not promoting because of that. I listened to some of the podcasts before I was on. It's really, really good. I thought I had a good podcast, but I think he takes the cake. So thank you. And I want to thank you all for watching or listening to this podcast. Me and Jeff, thank you so much. But do me a favor and do Jeff a favor. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Yes. And not to get the numbers and stuff. Yeah, that's okay. But here's the power of that. You can listen to and find his podcast just by, when you subscribe, you have the channel there. It's easy to find. You can listen to it over and over again and share it with your family and friends. Go, hey, subscribe here. Jeff was a great guest, and many other great guests too that are like Jeff, that want to help you and support you and motivate you and educate you. And as I say, 100%. Thank you. And thanks again, Jeff. We'll see all of you in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.